I'm Michael Keller. I'm the Director of Special Education in Los Alamitos Unified School District. I work at the district office in the Department of Educational Services.
I'm Julia Stockman. I'm a resource teacher at Rossmore Elementary.
Jenna Rogers.
I think culturally across the country, the answer is unfortunately yes. There's lots of different ways that people with disabilities experience life, and some have more challenging situations than others. And I think it's unfortunately, it's a pretty natural, normal part of the human process to look at differences that people might have, whether it be physical, learning, behavioral, communication differences. People kind of tend to look at that as something that is, if they're not familiar with it, it's as something that's different, and sometimes it can be fear-inducing for some people, and hard to kind of feel comfortable around it if you don't have experience. So unfortunately, I think yes. What we try to do is make sure that to the greatest extent possible, people that have any types of differences have a great opportunity to be educated alongside typical peers as much as possible, and we want everybody to have the same kind of great experiences that all students have opportunities to have.
Yes, I do at times, depending on who it is they're interacting with. I think those of us that are familiar and are very comfortable and know how to work and interact with people who have disabilities, I think sometimes that differential treatment is removed for us just because we're so accustomed into knowing how to be sensitive to their needs. So in a school setting, I see that sometimes that is removed just because that's what we do. But I'm sure that they are treated differently probably by people who maybe feel uncomfortable or don't know about what someone is like beyond their disability. So I think it's a yes and no answer. Yes, I think out in the rest of the world, people who aren't used to or know about different disabilities, yes, I could see people being treated differently.
I do. I think that most people in our community are empathetic and compassionate. It's been important to me for my son for people to be informed on what his disabilities are and what his limitations are. And I feel like the more people understand, the more compassion and empathy that they show. But of course, he's treated differently. I mean, he has limitations, and a lot of people are hesitant to include him to take on the responsibility of having him.
I agree. I feel like it's not as much as like he's seen as different or they are seen as different. I feel like it's more people are just treating him better than they would treat the average person because he has like problems and they know about it. If they don't know and they just see like a kid who is different and like with challenges, they would act differently than to a normal person, I feel like. And yeah.
I think in general, most people are accepting. I mean, it depends on a specific situation or circumstance where there might be a problem. And developmentally, I think it's different across as children experience school from preschool all the way up to graduation from high school. Younger children tend to naturally be very accepting, especially depending on how they grow up in a household and what experiences they might have, who they've been exposed to in terms of just different cultures or languages or a variety of different experiences. They just tend to be more open. And I think that it's a pretty natural developmental process as you get into adolescence to kind of look at differences, and maybe some people feel more insecure at certain times, and so they tend to judge people outwardly a little bit more. So I think that there's kind of this natural process of differentiation as you get into the middle school ages and adolescence. And then I think we see some really good, strong leadership where people are really accepting and they become kind of peer leaders where they kind of help other people to feel connected. And our goal is that all students feel connected to school and have a safe, enriched learning experience where they feel welcome and a valuable member of the school community.
There are definitely different ways on how students are treated at school, depending on different parts of who that student is. So I see that some students who have disabilities who are very comfortable with who they are, either because of how their parents have supported them or just their own confidence level, I see those students actually thriving and feeling very comfortable with their peers and being treated in a very positive way by their peers, where it's almost a non-issue. I've seen that happen. I have seen situations where students who struggle with communicating or struggle with social skills sometimes can struggle with peer interactions, and then they might be treated differently. And then I've seen everything else in between. So there could be a range. Sometimes friendships may shift, and that might be due to a learning disability, or it might not be related at all. So I feel like there's such a range in how they're treated.
Well, I'm not really there on a regular basis, so I don't see as much, but Jack has an aide with him all the time, and she is really good at communicating with me and letting me know how his day goes. It's hard for him to verbalize, so I look to her for help in understanding what his day is like. And for the most part, you know, he's involved in bus buddies at school. He goes 3 days a week, and the kids are really good to him there.
I agree. I feel like his learning process is a lot slower than the normal kid, especially like in PE. It's different because he's in the special needs PE class, so they do a lot of different things that normal kids would do. They go at a slower pace. It's called adaptive physical education. So they not necessarily run every single day, but they do like basketball. He tells me about basketball and stuff. He does tell me about how he plays with his teacher a lot. He loves to play with Miss Simone. He does great in the regular classes that he's in like his drama classes and his exploratory wheels classes. All the kids are super nice and respectful of him when he doesn't know how to speak. And yeah.
Growing up, my older brother is a person with epilepsy, and so he had a lot of challenges related to that. Epilepsy is a condition that causes neurological misfiring, basically. So there's lots of different ways that it might impact somebody. He had, on the scale of condition, it was pretty mild, but it was enough for him to kind of lapse out of being able to pay attention for a long period of time. And so he really struggled with that in elementary school. When it was identified, he had to go through a lot of testing, a lot of research about exactly identifying the condition, and then a long-term treatment. And so the risk associated with that is that if for him, eventually he grew up out of it, and it didn't really have lifelong impacts other than some early gaps. But if some of that stuff wouldn't have been identified, he didn't get appropriate treatment, it really could have impacted his long-term outcomes. So ultimately, my brother's situation, he ended up being really cured over time. But some people, that's just not their experience, and they have lifetime impacts, and that's and again, they're everybody with differences. They're people first, and any challenges that they might have, those are just the things that don't necessarily define them. And my brother didn't let it define him, but those are just things that people deal with, and we want them to, ultimately have enriched, high-quality lives.
In the school year, it was
the
last week of
June
school.
12th, 2008, and the next day was my third grade play. I was Anteater number 1. That night, my younger brother, Jack, had a fever, threw up in my mom's bed, and then they took him out to the living room. He was sitting on my dad's lap, and he wasn't responding. He was breathing, he was drooling, and he was blinking, but he was not responsive. He was not doing anything. He was just sitting there. And so my sister was in the bathtub, and so my mom called 911 and told me to get my sister out of the bath. So I pounded on the door and said, Emily, get out of the tub, there's people coming over. She ran out of the tub, she ran into her room with a towel on. All of a sudden, all these firefighters and ambulances come in, and they're all surrounding my little kitchen in our house, and Jack's laying on the floor, and he's rolled onto his side, and then the next thing I know, I'm hopping into our friend's car going to her house that night. So we had to pack a bag, and then we left, and I didn't know anything at the time. I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was it was something called a Caesar. I literally went to my 3rd grade teacher the next day and said my brother had a Caesar, and she said, Caesar salad? I said, no, it was like a Caesar. I don't really know how to say it. And so I went on, did my 3rd grade play. It was a beautiful, beautiful play.
No one from her family showed up except for her sister.
Hey,
her
my sister went.
Her sister went.
Fully went and supported Aunt Enid #1 school. Shining moment. So then that summer, it was very hard for me and my sister because we were going house to house. I mean, we weren't really home. We didn't really see my parents that often. We were out of the loop a lot. No one really had the courage to tell us what was actually happening. And we were going to Oregon to stay with my cousins. We were going to my grandma's to stay there for a night. We were going to friends' houses to stay there for a night. We were all over the place. And finally, when that summer was over, Jack had lost 20 pounds, was not talking, had to relearn how to walk, had to relearn how to talk, had to relearn how to eat and do normal things again. Like, he was just born again. And so it was really hard to come from having a normal brother to now adapting to these awful situations that me and my sister were put in, because I mean, everyone was so sympathetic to our family and so empathetic, but no one would tell us what was going on, you know? So to be out of the loop that much was really hard, because I was like, why, where is everybody? So we weren't so much out of the loop that I didn't know that he was having seizures, but we were out of the loop like, oh my God, he's almost dead. So when we came out, on my birthday in 2008 was when he first talked again. That was very exciting for all of us. That was a very exciting day. And from then on, he's had 15 brain surgeries? 12 brain surgeries in the last
3 years, 4 years.
3 or 4 years.
4 going on 5. It'll be 5 years in March.
It'll
that
be
he
5
had
years.
his first surgery.
And a lot of them have been conflicting with good events. For instance, my 8th grade graduation, he was in the hospital. Birthdays in the hospital. We spent Halloween in the hospital. We spent
His birthday.
4th of July, New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
His birthday was in the hospital. That was his first brain surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard to adapt to new situations, I guess. And being at a young age and trying to adapt was really hard. And trying to put on a brave face was kind of hard.
I made my work working with people with disabilities or people with learning and behavioral differences and challenges. Absolutely passionate about helping students first and foremost who have challenges with learning or communication or different types of behavioral challenges to be the best that they can be. And so we have a full team of people at the school district from preschool all the way up to, we serve students all the way up to age 22 at the district office who have committed their lives to enriching the lives of students with disabilities. I'm just absolutely passionate about it. So I've seen some really amazing things happen, and on an individual basis we see some just inspiring things. And then as a system, I think that we do a lot of really great work with making great experiences for students. I mean, we want students to have every experience that a typical student had. I think I've already said that. We want you to have all the doors open for you when you're done with high school, and that can include college or career or whatever you want to do. So we want every door to be open to all students. We truly live by igniting unlimited possibilities for all students, and that's kind of the emphasis that I bring is the all means all.
No, I would say, and I think I would speak for every teacher that I work with, just because at least at this school and at every school within LoSal, because I've been assigned to several schools, more than just one here, and I've taught in other districts, but I'll just speak for LoSal for right now because this is where I'm at. As far as students who have any disability, I have to say, when there's so much movement and different programs that we offer within our school settings, whether it's intervention groups or having kids go to just music or STEM lab, there's so much movement of students and different things that happen that those kids that have a learning challenge or a learning need, I don't think they stand out in any way to an adult who talks to them or how they interact with them. No, I feel like as far as how we greet them when they walk in the door, I don't see a difference in that at all.
I really view people differently versus before my son got sick. Now I seek to understand, and I like to ask questions because I know people look at us when we're out in the real world. Let's say we're shopping or somewhere where people don't know us, and they're curious, and you see Jack has a big scar on his head from where he had the surgeries, and he has a prosthetic skull because his skull got infected a couple years ago. But so, for example, we were leaving the Ducks game last week, and there was a kid, and Jack is very curious about other people, and there was a kid in a wheelchair, and he was trached, and the first thing Jack says is, "Oh no, what happened? What happened?" And I say kid, but he's probably 30. He said, I was in a car accident, and I said, "Oh, wow." It just, you don't want to dismiss somebody. And I think for me, like being the mother of someone with special needs, I don't want my son dismissed. Like I prefer that people ask and try to understand, what's going on, and include him, because he really, he loves being included. He loves to just sit in on conversations, even when I'm with, like when we were at Jen's, in San Francisco, and we're all sitting in the nook, and he just wants to be involved, and he wants to be recognized, as a person.
No, that's about it.